Good evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblum, and you're watching the Theo Nightly video for the 26th of May here in 2022. And we are focusing on not only the rally, we'll get to that in a minute, but Costco earnings. A retail giant, their retail name, is reporting earnings. They were better than expected. In fact, this is our news panel, just came out. Better than expected, revenue up, missed on same store sales. So did the market reward or punish the stock? Punish, but not by much. Looking at the implied volatility and the expected move, that's Costco for Friday's option expiration, $37 up and down for the expected move, generally speaking. That would put the stock, we'll actually note that if there's a rally, that puts it up to about $502 on the downside. That is about to the 425, 427. We see Costco shares. Again, you'll have more information than I do because this is right after the market closes. Shares trade right now at about 454, which puts them right about here, which means not much of a change, at least immediately. The market wasn't quite sure what to make the initial report. New high, back to the low, and then of course we have that. The conference call will be coming up in just a moment. So this could change, and it could change by Friday morning. But nonetheless, we'll pull the perspective back on Costco to see that its uptrend, like the other retail giants, has snapped, which is Walmart. We'll look at Target, big box retail companies, and then Costco had its high just recently at $600 per share, now trades down towards 420, 430, and is currently about, at the moment, 455. That's Costco, and that will be Friday's expected move and fallout. But today we had Nvidia, and Nvidia had its earnings, and the report was a little bit lower. But wait, earnings were right after the bell. Nvidia shares opened the market roughly, we'll squish this back up, roughly unchanged, and then wound up doing a trend and recovery all the way higher. So that was one that went to the other side after a initial sell side activity on the exact numbers. So this could change with Costco just as quickly and as easily. So we'll be watching that. That'll be on the radar. Anything else with major earnings? Medtronics was down 5, almost 6% in today's session, and see its downtrend continues. There are the earnings, and that stock stayed down at those levels and actually closed, roughly speaking, where the earnings outcome played after hours. And then we have Costco again. Salesforce.com will report next week. We do have a holiday on Monday. But until then, the market was up. This is the Russell, the broader S&P 500. Some of the leading stocks, we'll actually sort by leading stocks. We'll pinpoint a few of those names. Tesla was the number one company that reported, at least gained 7% in today's session. Costco right behind it. That'll change, at least for the after hours. Costco back down, but it did go up 5% in today's session. Right there behind it is again Nvidia. So earnings, things with earnings are moving market, or at least are getting some pushback, snapback, and some volatility. But behind that was Boeing, Nike, Target, Accenture, Facebook, and Amazon, FedEx, General Motors, and others. There's lows. So what might be a theme of today's session? They could change Friday, but right now, could be that retail bounces back, at least in the short term. That's what we're watching. So Tesla, Amazon, consumer discretionary. There's Home Depot, Lowe's, and other companies, Nike included, Dollar General, and Dollar Tree, just in the S&P 500. What was weak in today's session? Not a lot. Kraft Heinz Foods and Medtronics. Medtronics, again, earnings before the bell. But then American Tower and Merck. Not a lot else was weak in today's session. Seeing this on the S&P 100, that tends to be the stocks that I will focus on and trade. There's Kraft Heinz Food. Of course, healthcare was a little red spot in today's session, as was utilities, but that isn't a lot of the broader market, and of course the S&P. There's Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, and Google, Nvidia, all of those leading the Nasdaq to a 2.6% gain in today's session. So let's start there. So technology and retail companies, mainly such as Nike, continues to make those lows and continues their downtrend. So the broader retail sector, also seen in XLK technology, and Y retail, but that got a big bounce today. In fact, retail stocks, we just saw some of those. The general sector bounced almost 5%. That's in a session where the broader indices were up 2%, 2.5%, and the Russell was right there at 2%. The Dow, 30 stocks in the Dow, those are the weakest in today's session, and by weakest I mean up by 1.5%. So outside of that, there is the focus of the bounce or snapback on the daily chart. It is a bear market rally, and these things can gather some steam, but keep that in the context. So since the market peak, we're looking at the S&P, that was earlier, right at the start of 2022, the market has been in a downtrend with making lower lows, lower highs. That alone was what we call a strong, but nonetheless a bear market rally. So those can happen. And the market continued the downtrend where we are at the moment. And that is about the 4,000 per share level, or the index level. In the S&P 500, we're watching it within respect to its 4,000 and about 450, 4,100. So stocks don't go straight up or straight down. They do trend, and the trend tends to be the driving force of money flowing into or out of the equity market, or into or out of the bond market, or into the only really market that's sustained, or the main market at least, that sustained continual bullish action, and that's crude oil. And right behind it is some of the energy stocks, energy being the XLE is our sector ETF to watch or to trade. But behind that could be stocks like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and in fact, we'll just do a scan of stocks making new 52-week highs. So in the videos, I like to show these, at least which stocks are leading the market. Not a lot. The market is in a downtrend, and the stocks are in a bear market, Nasdaq specifically, and that just means off 20% from the high. But there are stocks making new 52-week highs, and the names are similar: Exxon, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and Marathon Oil, Occidental Petroleum, and down the list. I do like to sort stock scans by market cap, and I do tend to pay attention to the top names in any of the scans that I do. So these will come to the top, but let's take a look at which stocks will do the same thing, are making 52-week lows. And that's on a day the market bounced. So to do these scans, it's a public list, new yearly lows, and I will scan in the S&P 500. Are there any names? Medtronics. And that right there is, again, an earnings play. At the moment, we've seen Nike and lots of retail and other technology names making 52-week lows. Only one in today's session when the market was up, and that is notable. So Medtronics was the only stock to make 52-week lows. But outside of that, it was mainly energy companies that pushed the market, or at least led the market in terms of 52-week highs. The leadership came from utilities and technology sector, and a little bit of financials as well. So bear market continues, downtrend continues, but in crude oil, inflation still is a concern, and that's why the Fed is still on the forefront of raising rates. That will continue to have us focused here at TheoTrade on the 10-year Treasury note, and this is the yield. And that 10-year yield is that 30 right here actually represents 3%. So 3% is that key inflection point or key level to be watching. Similar logic to where we saw 220, which is 2% here in the TNX, 2%. Once the market hit that 2% level, it did stall briefly and then broke above it and continued powerfully higher. Might we be seeing a same thing as we saw earlier in 2022 with the yield pushing down a little bit, but still at that key inflection, or at least we might say a psychological, a reference point, something we all talk about, 3% for the 10-year Treasury note. And that will be just opposite of the 10-year, or the TLT, that's your 10-20 or 20-30 year Treasury ETF. So the TLT does continue the downtrend. And again, how is the downtrend labeled? Lower lows, lower highs in price. And this is, dare I call it, a bear market rally. Just a retracement up to its 120 per share level. And that is, again, TLT, the bond market. Gold remained mostly flat, and it's back into where it held its price levels or held its range resistance right about that 1825 or 1800 per ounce for the better part of 2021. Gold prices did peak earlier in the year at about 2050 per ounce, another double top, or at least a second hit at the high. That was at 2000 per ounce, but we see gold prices back into the trading range, and we'll pull that into a little bit larger time frame to see that that is a relatively wide but stable range for gold prices. And that again is about 1700, 1750, and on the upper bound 2000 or 2050, and that's held since about 2020, 2021. A little price movement back to the high, and then right back in the range. To compare that with oil, oil had its continued breakout and rally, as did the equity market, but the equity market has turned and gone to the downside. All those in context. So Friday gives us more information about earnings, the market itself, and the holiday weekend yet to come. As always, be careful and safe. This is Corey Rosen with tonight's Theo video update from May 26th, 2022.